Hello, my name is Mark Rohald. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Cluey Learning, and I've been asked to put together this very brief presentation that explains what the Intensive Learning Support Program is in New South Wales and how Cluey has been selected as a provider under this program and what this means for Cluey. In essence, the Intensive Learning Support Program provides intensive learning support in the form of small group tuition for educationally disadvantaged students across New South Wales primary and secondary schools. This program was established in response to the drop in student performance resulting from widespread school closures during COVID-19. And according to the Grattan Institute, New South Wales students have fallen on average 3 to 4 months behind in their literacy and numeracy during COVID-19. And this is probably going to be even more pronounced amongst those students who come from disadvantaged backgrounds. We know that online learning during COVID shutdown tended to work pretty well, in fact, very well, for students who came from higher socioeconomic backgrounds. Logically, these are the students who have access or had access to all the technology and the content. However, for students from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, many of them did little, if any, learning while they were at home. So in order to try and address these learning deficiencies, schools have been provided funding to employ additional educators to deliver small group tutoring to students who need it most. The quantum of this funding is $337 million. And this was set aside as follows: $306 million for New South Wales government schools and $31 million for non-government schools that have demonstrated the highest levels of need. The New South Wales Department of Education identified those schools who would be eligible for the program, the amount they'll receive, and the approximate number of students to be supported as part of the program. These schools were notified late last year, so that was December 2020, when the government announced the program. And the program kicked off in term 1 of 2021. Some of the key features of the program that is important to understand is that it's only for students identified as being in need, and the Department of Education worked with schools to identify those students who would be eligible. It's estimated that there are approximately 290,000 students who will be eligible for the learning support under this initiative. It is a condition that all tuition that's delivered to these students must be provided by New South Wales accredited teachers, and the focus of the learning support will be on literacy and numeracy core skills. Since the government launched this initiative at the beginning of 2021, it's proven difficult for schools to organize the quantum of teaching and resources required to support these students. And as such, the government has reached out to the private sector to see if we can help provide the support. This is not something that is unique to Australia. It is similar to other learning support and tutoring initiatives that have been rolled out in other countries, such as the NTP in the United Kingdom. So what is this new private company tutoring initiative? It's an additional option now for schools to use private providers to help deliver the COVID intensive learning support program that started at the beginning of this year. This option was announced in June 2021. In other words, the option to use private providers, with the delivery of services by private providers set to commence at the beginning of term 3 of 2021. It's an opportunity for all New South Wales public schools to engage private providers to deliver tuition services in the form of small groups across literacy and numeracy. And it's important to understand that this is absolutely aimed at addressing high priority staffing areas. And there have already been a list that's been distributed of those areas across New South Wales where they have been identified as high priority staffing areas. There are 16 areas, and at present there is very little crossover of those locations and our existing students. The way in which the tutoring will be provided is via small groups of 2 to 5 students per group, and these students will attend between 3 and 5 sessions per week during the school terms. The tuition can be delivered either online or in person and must be delivered by New South Wales accredited teachers. This tutoring can be delivered before, during, or after school. In terms of the cost of the tutoring, the range is around $120 to $140 per hour, and Cluey will be charging $135 per hour for each small group that operates, and each group can have between 2, 3, 4, or 5 students at any point in time. In terms of who was selected and approved to deliver under this arrangement, 4 providers were approved. One is really more of a marketplace. It's the Australian Tutoring Association, where a number of teachers promote and offer their services. One is a relief or casual teacher recruitment company. And then there were 2 tutoring companies that were selected. And the 2 tutoring companies that were selected were Cluey and Kip McGrath. So how do schools go about applying to be eligible under this program? So those schools that are eligible have already been informed by the Department of Education of this initiative. Schools have been sent a link to the Department of Education website for details, and if they're interested, they can send a request for a quote from Cluey or one of the other providers to deliver the services. We then respond to the request for service, and if the school and liaise and work with the school in trying to configure the service to optimize it for their needs, and provided they're happy to accept the quote, we go ahead and we provide them with a service agreement. We then start delivering the services, and we provide weekly service summary reports and get paid by the government. So what does all of this mean for Cluey? Well, this is not the first time that we've delivered to schools. Last year, in 2020, we delivered a pilot project where we delivered tutoring services to 6 public schools. And the fact that we've now been selected to participate in this initiative validates the quality and ability of Cluey to deliver to schools at scale. I think it's important the fact that the state governments, both New South Wales and Victoria, and their various education departments are turning to tutoring as a key solution for students in need. And this is a strong vindication of the value of our services and indicates the ongoing challenge that face traditional school structures in being able to deliver highly personalized learning support for each and every student. More broadly, governments, education departments, and schools are now clearly acknowledging the value of tutoring to support students with individual learning needs and to fill their learning gaps. The option for us to deliver our services all online, fully synchronously, is also validation of our learning platforms, our content, and pedagogy, further accelerating the shift to online. In the main, the students who are eligible to participate in this initiative are not students who would typically use Cluey services. So there is very little risk of cannibalization. The funding for this initiative will probably span 2 years. And it may even go on to a 3rd year, as has been the case in the United Kingdom. Cluey, as we know, is a business to consumer business. And we see this, which is a business to business service, as supplementary to our core revenues, with the benefit of these revenues coming with a 0 or very low customer acquisition cost. We are not planning to transform our entire business to go hard at trying to capture a very large component of this funding. Potentially, we see 10, 15% revenue booster, maybe a little more, but it's hard to tell given that the program hasn't launched yet and we don't yet know the level of take-up. We're also very well aware of the fact that schools are slow in moving and it's going to take time for the program to ramp up. We're also conscious of the fact that historically, education institutions that have become heavily dependent on government funding have found it very difficult to then deal with the situation when the funding ends. And as such, we're committed to the fact that we are not going to make this a large or core part of our business. Finally, I'd like to add that our business is already well geared to deliver this service. Our pilot program last year demonstrated this. We're making some tweaks in our business. For example, we've appointed a person to head our school sales and marketing, and some schools client managers to support the onboarding and day-to-day support of schools. But we don't need to invest significantly in technology. We don't need to invest much or anything in changing our services, and we don't need to invest heavily in people in order to support and deliver the service. Everything's in place. It's now simply a matter of building the traction and getting going. I hope you found this session informative and that it answers a number of the questions that you may have had regarding the tutoring support program that's on offer. Thank you.